Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 19th of November. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. In its strongest effort yet to hold the North Korean leadership accountable for alleged crimes against humanity, a UN committee recommends referring the North's human rights situation to the International Criminal Court. The special envoy of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un meets Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow as both sides look to each other for an ally amid their deepening diplomatic isolation. Plus, Israel's Prime Minister vows to respond with a heavy hand after Palestinian militants kill 5 people in an attack on a synagogue in Jerusalem. But we start with the big news out of New York, that a UN committee has voted in favor of pushing to ensure the perpetrators of crimes against humanity in North Korea face justice. The resolution now goes to a vote at a plenary UN assembly next month. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
A UN Human Rights Committee approved a resolution on Tuesday which calls for the Security Council to refer North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. The resolution, drafted by the European Union and Japan, passed overwhelmingly with the support of 111 countries. 19 members opposed it and 55 abstained. The approval came despite last-minute protests by North Korea and its allies. Earlier in the day, Cuba proposed an amendment that would have deleted some lines in the resolution that says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un should face the ICC. The committee voted down that proposal. The original EU-Japan drafted resolution will now be put to a vote at a plenary UN assembly in the coming weeks, but while it mounts extra pressure on Pyongyang, it's unlikely to actually bring about any tangible results in the criminal court. Pundits say China and Russia, both veto-wielding permanent members of the Security Council, will almost certainly use their power to stop the North Korean leader being targeted by prosecutors. The two countries voted for the Cuban proposal while voting against the original one. North Korea fired off some sharp warnings before Tuesday's vote, saying the passage of the resolution would prompt it to conduct further nuclear tests. The vote came after a UN investigative panel concluded in February that officials in the North are responsible for systematic killing, torture, and starvation. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
Now, North Korea and Russia, two countries that are very much teetering on the edge of diplomatic isolation for one reason or another, are attempting to make nice with one another, looking to forge at least one friendly relationship on the international stage. Choi Ryong-hae, the special envoy for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, has been holding talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Now, the Kremlin says Che gave Putin a personal letter from Kim Jong-un, but it did not elaborate on anything about the contents of the letter or what Che or Putin actually talked about. But pundits assume they discussed ways to strengthen their countries' bilateral ties in one way or another. The North Korean envoy, who is on an 8-day trip to Russia, is scheduled to meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Thursday. Now, the chairwoman of South Korea's Hyundai Group made a 1-day trip to North Korea on Tuesday, where she attended an event commemorating the 16th anniversary of the Inter-Korean tourism project operated by her company. The tours to Mount Kumgang haven't been held since 2008, but Hyun Jong-un told reporters upon her return that Hyundai Asan would do everything it could to resume this joint venture. The company says the more than 6-year suspension has resulted in close to $1 trillion in losses. That's some roughly $850 million US. Now, moving on to domestic politics here in South Korea. And a set of bills related to April's Sewol-ho ferry disaster have been given the green light by Cabinet. And under these new laws, 2 new government agencies will be established in what's being seen as the Korean government's first steps to hopefully boost safety measures in the wake of that awful ferry sinking. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
The cabinet passed 3 special bills on this Tuesday aimed at making Korea a safer place and punishing those found responsible for causing human casualties due to lax safety management. Under the amended Government Organization Act, 2 new ministry-level agencies will be set up under the Prime Minister's office. One will oversee disaster and safety management, the other will oversee government personnel matters. President Park Geun-hye tapped former Navy Admiral Park In-yong to head the new safety agency and Lee Geum-myeon to lead the government's Human Resources Agency. Another bill, which has been at the center of contention at the National Assembly for months, also received approval. The so-called Seoul Ferry Law will set up a special investigative committee composed of 17 members that will have 18 months to look into the cause of the ferry disaster. They will have the legal authority to summon witnesses and appoint a special prosecutor who will investigate and indict those found responsible for the tragedy. And to better compensate victims, the newly enacted Yoo Byung-won law, named after the deceased de facto owner of the Seoul ferry, gives the government more authority to go after and confiscate illegally obtained wealth by individuals or companies. Even related third parties involved in an unlawful act can be subject to asset seizures. Ultimately, it's aimed at holding those accountable for tragedies that result in death. The 3 special bills come as part of government efforts to respond to fierce public criticism over its failed rescue operations following the fatal Seoul ferry sinking. Kim Jong-un, ARIRANG News.
And as part of its anti-corruption drive, the Korean government is launching a special task force this week to root out, hopefully, corruption in the country's defense industry. Officials say prosecutors, military investigators, civilian experts, as well as members of the Financial Supervisory Service will be a part of this investigation team. Corruption in the nation's defense industry came under the spotlight just last month when a former Navy officer was indicted on charges of fabricating a document to buy underperforming parts for the naval salvage ship Tongyong. Doing so had rendered this ship incapable of taking part in rescue operations efforts following the sinking of the Seoul ferry back in April. Not only will the team look into suspected corruption related to that case, but they'll also look into irregularities between defence contractors as a whole. Now, across the East Sea and in the wake of the news that his country had fallen into recession, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Tuesday called a snap election for the middle of next month. Watchers say this move is a very bold attempt by Abe to try and shore up support for his decision to postpone by around 18 months a very unpopular sale tax rise. And Abe hopes it will breathe life into his particular brand of economic policy if he's re-elected, of course. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
The Japanese economy is still suffering from the first consumption tax hike of 5 to 8% delivered in April and is not ready for another rise in the sales tax. This, according to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who said that the current state of his country's economy forced him to push back a second consumption tax increase of 10% that was set for October next year. His call for a delay comes after data released Monday showed that Japan had slipped into a technical recession following a second consecutive quarterly decline in its gross domestic product. Japan's rising consumer taxes have been blamed for the decline in consumer spending, which affected the quarterly falls.
We have finally grasped this chance of breaking free from deflation which has plagued us for the past 15 years. We cannot let go of this chance. We must not return to that dark and confused period.
Analysts say another delay of the tax increase will slow down the country from repairing its public finances, but Abe said the risk to the economy was a much bigger threat. The Prime Minister also said the lower house of parliament will be dissolved this Friday and called snap elections for mid-December. The move is being seen as a push by Abe to reorganize and strengthen his set of economic policies known as Abenomics. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now back here in Korea, and the nation's central bank governor has expressed concerns that a potential rise in the key interest rate next year could result in some households defaulting on their mortgage loans. Lee Ji-yeol added on Tuesday, though, that households defaulting on their debts is not something he nor the Bank of Korea has any control over. He also said the impact of changes to the key interest rate have diminished recently due to rising economic uncertainties at home and abroad. The current key interest rate in Korea stands at just 2%. That's a historic low, not seen since the height of the global financial crisis back in 2009. In regards to the weakening Japanese yen, the central bank governor said it was not desirable to implement monetary policies to counter the weak Japanese currency. Now, this year might not bring too much Christmas cheer to bank workers in Korea, as a number of the nation's major banks are preparing to lay off staff through early next year. According to financial sources, KB Gungming Bank is expected to review voluntary resignation plans in the coming days. Other banks, including Uri Bank, are planning to follow suit, while some banks also plan to cut back on the number of new hires. This comes as banks in Korea have been seeing their profits tumble recently, and their aging workforces have been dragging down their productivity. An increasing number of branches have also been suffering losses, due mainly to the rise of other banking channels we have these days, such as the internet and smartphone banking. Now to the Middle East, and a deadly terror attack on a synagogue has rattled the Jewish community in Jerusalem. Of course, the city already tense following earlier strikes, and the divide now between Israelis and Palestinians is as deep as ever. For more on this and other global headlines we're following this Wednesday morning here in Seoul, let's turn, as always, to our Eunice Kim at the News Centre. Good morning to you, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
This assault, actually, believe it or not, is the worst the city has seen in years, we're being told. It's being reported. How is Israel reacting?
Well, Mark, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising a harsh and swift response in what he said was a battle for Jerusalem, attributing, quote, wild blood libel by the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad for inciting such a terror attack. It was pandemonium Tuesday at a synagogue located in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of East Jerusalem. Palestinian cousins stormed the house of prayer with meat cleavers and guns in hand during morning prayers, killing 4 rabbis and wounding others before being shot dead in a firefight with police. A police officer was later pronounced dead of his wounds at a hospital. Police say all 4 deceased rabbis had dual Israeli citizenship, 3 from the U.S. and 1 from Great Britain. Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered that the perpetrators' homes be destroyed. Tensions have been mounting in Jerusalem, as you say, over access to a holy site known to Jews as the Temple Mount and to Muslims as Al-Haram al-Sharif. Orthodox Jews want to be allowed to pray at the compound, while Palestinians hope to make East Jerusalem, where the site sits, their capital in a future state. The World Health Organization is working on developing faster and cheaper Ebola tests to help stamp out the hemorrhagic virus for good. WHO expert Pierre Fomenti in a Geneva news conference said currently an Ebola infection is determined by a blood test analyzed at mobile laboratories that requires several hours for a diagnostic. The group is now looking at 2 types of speedier tests, one a PCR integrated one that takes about an hour for results, and the other one that would only require 15 minutes, similar to that of a stick pregnancy test. Fomenti said the new test could come in 4 to 6 months. Ebola, of course, has killed nearly 5,200 people, mostly in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, with a new cluster of cases being observed in Mali. Sierra Leone has recently lost its 7th doctor in its struggle against the highly contagious virus. Long under heavy fire for alleged corruption, FIFA has turned the tables and filed a criminal complaint against unnamed individuals over the bidding race for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. The world governing body for football said in a statement there seemed to be, quote, isolated cases of international transfers of assets with connections to Switzerland that merit examination by authorities. The criminal complaint was filed to Switzerland's Attorney General on Tuesday. FIFA said it will submit all 430 pages of a recent confidential investigation by American prosecutor Michael Garcia. Russia and Qatar won the bidding contest for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. Finally, infamous American serial killer Charles Manson is said to tie the knot to a woman 54 years his junior, after the couple was granted a marriage license earlier this month in Kings County, California. The 80-year-old is behind bars for murdering 7 people, including Hollywood actress Sharon Tate, who was pregnant at the time. His to-be wife, 26-year-old Afton Elaine Burton, who goes by the name Star, moved from her Midwestern home at 19 to be closer to Manson and has been advocating his innocence since. She says they are planning a December wedding. Manson faces a life sentence and is eligible for parole in 2027.
Says that a team of South Korean...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Now, battery technology has often been cited as a major hurdle in the way of the full commercialization of electric vehicles. We still see them around on the streets, of course, but it does take them an awfully long time to charge up still. But that might all be about to change thanks to some groundbreaking work by some Korean researchers. Our Kim Jong-un has this report.
A group of Korean researchers has developed lithium-ion batteries that charge 7 times faster than conventional ones. A team of researchers from the Department of Chemical Engineering at Pohang University of Science and Technology made the batteries by exploiting inorganic materials such as silica and titanium. This is different from the traditional method of lining up various templates of colloidal crystals and Black Hawk polymers consecutively, which requires more time and effort. The team says the method also provides a better alternative for the way we synthesize materials and could bring about changes in the way we store energy in the future due to its fast delivery of electrolytes and ions from its complex porous structures. The research team says it's now working on applying their academic findings in the real world and expects to commercialize the technology in 5 years. In the meantime, the post-tech research team is eyeing ways to increase the synthetic scale of its finding for mass production. Their work was first published in the Journal of the American Chemical Society last month. Kim Jong-un, ARIRANG News.
Dozens of digital content creators and professionals and YouTube stars from across the globe are gathered in Seoul over the next day or two, and they're here to exchange their big and brightest ideas for what is a very lucrative and rapidly expanding industry. Our Park Ji-won reports.
Chung Sung-ha is a young Korean guitarist with several albums and global concerts under his belt, working with various international stars like Jason Mraz. His rise to fame began with a simple video uploaded to YouTube, and now Chung has nearly 3 million subscribers. Yang Ding followed a similar path. As a young female gamer, she creates diverse video sharing contents, mostly broadcasts of games, and has over 1 million YouTube subscribers. They are just a couple examples of the new wave of creators. YouTube Content Operations Director Dave Powell says now is the golden time for individuals to create contents because of the diversity of new media platforms.
Here in Korea, YouTube creators are heralding the one-person startup economy. Fans in Korea and globally are responding. So 25% of our fastest growing channels with international subscribers are endemic or native creators on YouTube. 70% of our fastest growing channels with local or Korean subscribers are created by endemic creators.
Digital technology is affecting more conventional media like television as well. A producer of the US hit program House of Cards says the drama has benefited from big data, which is being used to analyze viewer preferences. However, Hip said that in the end, it's universal themes that capture the attention of viewers, not the technology itself.
Each American network knows their audience and uses tons of research and tons of big data to kind of go in about what makes a show. You can have all the big data you want, but if the artists and the idea isn't something special, then distribution or big data doesn't really matter. It really has to start with the creative first.
This year's International Content Conference has invited guests from all around the world to discuss the latest trends of the industry, from digital technology platforms to big data analysis, and how the technology is changing the nature of the contents they create. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Korean national football team facing off against Iran last night, hoping to win their first match at away in Iran. Now, with the addition of Ki Sung-young and Son Heung-min in the lineup, the Korean national football team looked great from the start, with Son Heung-min getting several shots on goal. With the match going into the second half tied 0-0, what looked to be a goalkeeper charging by Sardar Osman in the 81st minute is ruled a goal, as Iran holds on to win this match on a controversial goal, with Korea still winless against Iran at away. And now shifting over to the KBO, where the 2014 KBO award ceremony took place on Tuesday afternoon, and highlighting the event was the MVP of the 2014 KBO season. Now, in a battle between the four Nexon Heroes teammates in Park Byung-ho, Kang Jong-ho, Seok Won-chang, and Andy Van Hecken, the Nexon second baseman Seok Won-chang received the most votes with 77, as he was named the 2014 KBO MVP. Now, the former Rookie of the Year finished the 2014 regular season hitting .370 with 135 runs scored, including a KBO record of 201 hits. Meanwhile, NC Dino second baseman Park Min-woo was awarded the 2014 Rookie of the Year honors, beating out Nexon reliever Cho Sang-woo. And moving on, some good news for all the baseball fans in the world, as the sport will most likely return to the Olympics during the 2020 Tokyo Summer Games. Now, with the IOC holding a meeting in Switzerland, IOC President Thomas Bach proposed 40 recommendations as part of his reform agenda. The 2020 Olympic agenda, as it's called, also includes a proposal to all host cities to propose inclusion of one or more events. With the proposal likely to be passed next month in Monaco, baseball will most likely be included again in the 2020 Tokyo Summer Games after 12 years since being left out of the Summer Olympics. Now, on Tuesday, the KBO award ceremony might have taken the spotlight, but the 2014 Korea Women's Athletic Award winners were also announced, and grabbing the spotlight there was rhythmic gymnast Son Yeon-jae. The 20-year-old rhythmic gymnast, who enjoyed an incredible season in 2014, was given the top prize among some of the top female athletes in Korea. Now, earlier this year, she won Korea's first Asian Games gold medal in rhythmic gymnastics, increased her streak of 11 straight World Cup events with a podium finish, and also finished fourth in this year's World Championships. And now finishing things off in speed skating, with the second stage of the ISU Speed Skating World Cup kicking off in Taenung on the 21st. Olympic champion Sven Kramer of the Netherlands arrived in Korea and held a youth clinic. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, the 28-year-old speed skater held a youth speed skating clinic with 20 Korean students, hoping to be the next Lee Sang-hwa or even Sven Kramer. And he was quite impressed with the youngsters, stating that their speed is incredible in these short-distance races. Now, he added that they should first learn to enjoy the sport in order to succeed. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
winter-like morning will turn into pleasant afternoon with highs expected to reach low teens in many areas. So the big temperature gaps between lows and highs will be experienced in many areas. So take good care of yourself to avoid catching a cold. And right now it's a bit misty here in Seoul, but it's not a dust and it should gradually clear up. Then a bright day will be featured with plenty of sunshine across the nation. And the daytime high in the capital will peak at 11, while Daegu and Gwangju will top out at 14, and Busan will climb to 15 this afternoon. And it seems like Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 14 and 13 later on, and Dokdo should see a high of 11. Now, weather looks to be promising for the time being, but there could be afternoon showers in the capital area on Friday, but it's gonna be dry and sunny again on the weekends. That's all for now. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Thank you very much for the weather there, Gian, and that's all we have for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.